podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Cardiff Central Podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Cardiff Central Podcast. Once again, it's me, Harley, in the hot seat. I'm joined as ever by Carwyn. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Not too bad. Excited about this one. It's been a while since we've seen this guest on. Well, I've seen this guest anyway, so it's just nice to have him back.
Yeah. So as Carwyn's alluded to, we've got a special guest on this week. Now it's so and we've both interacted with on podcasts before, but it's his debut for Cardiff Central from the Scottish Rugby Podcast and Scottish Rugby blog. It's Craig Manson. How you doing, Craig?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on. It's great to catch up with you guys. As we've not talked for a while, and now on the new pod. Yeah, it's fantastic to be here.
Yeah, it's always excellent to have someone with such knowledge and appreciation of the dark arts and the scrum, because
hold on,
of us are clueless.
Don't build me up on that one, because there's bound to be people listening that are going to go, nah, he's talking rubbish.
We did a whole episode on it about a year ago today on that.
That's true, we did. Yeah, we did. Yeah, I'm surprised you haven't had feedback and people blocking you. You know,
Who says they haven't?
I just get the people who block and don't make a big song of dancing it, I think. So just going to quickly go through some Cardiff news first of all. So we had the CF10 Q&A last night with David Allen. Great, a lot of confirmation things. So I'll just go through the highlights. If people want to know more, I'll publish a little list of the minutes I took. So budget for next year's agreed by the new owner. So Dickie Holland, Matt Farrell and Neil, the new owner, they're off on safari hunting South African players. There's going to be, because we keep getting the questions about cap redevelopment, there won't be a shovel in the ground till July 2028 because of the European football in Cardiff around about then. So that's the big one. And apparently they're going to give the Pack Bar a lick of paint. So that's all we need to have. All we needed from that one. Then, do you want to go through the signing news, Carwyn?
Yes, re-signing and signing news. So, in honour of Craig coming on the pod today, Cardiff announced the re-signing of a whole new front row. So, Craig can eulogise about their services, but Domachowski, Belcher, and Azarati, they're on the front row. Got brilliant news, obviously, to have all three tied down for another couple of seasons. To be honest, one of the things that came out today that I was stunned about was Belcher only has appeared 70 odd times with Cardiff. I thought it was in the 150s. It feels like he's been around and performing well for ages, alongside the other two who have been brilliant in the last couple of seasons, especially. And then obviously the big news, bring him home and all that. Callum Sheedy returning to Cardiff, fresh from a spell at Bristol. He's coming back because he wants to get back in the Wales shirt. And as far as a Cardiff fan goes, that can only mean good things because he needs to perform to do that. And the competition he's going to give with Tinas de Beer is going to be, well, one for the ages, I think, Harley. I don't know how you feel about it, but I couldn't pick at the moment who starts between the two of them, which I think is a really good thing.
Well, I mean, I'll go with De Beer because I just think he's been fantastic for us. But pre-season, who knows what happens during pre-season and in training. Have you got any opinions on these signings, Craig, having watched the bits of the Premiership and the URC?
Yeah, I think retaining the front row, Domachowski, a good player. It's good to keep. Well, as you can probably tell with the current front row issues that we have in Scotland, etc. I'm always a big fan of keeping your forwards and keeping your tight heads and your loose heads as comfy and happy as possible because you need them. But I think Sheedy will be a really interesting signing. I know that obviously he's hungry to get back into the Wales shirt, and to be brutally honest, he's got a very, very good chance of getting back into the Wales shirt. So I think that's fantastic. But De Beers, I think is it De Beers? Yeah. He for me, I think what you have to do and what we've tried to do ourselves up in Scotland is you need to keep your 10 that's not qualified for international duties as sharp and as happy as possible, because If Sheedy is going to do what he's going to do, then you're going to need a good 10 that's going to keep you going in the times that he's not going to be available. So yeah, it'll be a balancing act, I would think.
Yeah, the thing I'm most excited about, and we've mentioned it several times, Harley, is that opportunity to rotate, because that hasn't been something that has been used this season, but also say De Beer does have a bit of a mere 55, 60 minutes in, which has happened or can happen, then you get Sheedy to close out the game or vice versa. And I'm just excited to see that. Sheedy being back in Cardiff brings me good and bad memories. I haven't played against him. One time he stepped past me and scored into the post and scored the winning game when trying to the game. But he's a quality operator, and it's great to see him. Well, hopefully back in the Wales reckoning and back in a Wales shirt in the future as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, obviously, because we can't predict the future, there are more signings being announced tomorrow. Well, today, as you listen to this. So it's I said. Getting plenty of stick for us being checkbook Charlies once again, but do you know what? If it's positive news, I'll take the abuse. So, obviously no URC fixtures this weekend, but we did have the Celtic Challenge, and going with the theme of this weekend of a sort of Wales v Scotland, we had Gwalia Lightning hosting Edinburgh, the Edinburgh Rugby women's team. I take it you both watched the game. What are your thoughts?
Craig, I'll go to you first because I'm frustrated again.
Yeah, I think it's. I had to watch it on catch up because as we discussed earlier, I'm kind of busy on Saturdays nowadays, so I don't get to see the games live as much. But I'm really impressed with how Edinburgh hit the ground running. I'm disappointed that they lost to the Irish team. I've forgotten their name, because Edinburgh had the opportunity to win win the league, if they hadn't dropped the first loss. But on the other side of things, the coach Claire Cruikshank has been heavily involved with Edinburgh University Rugby, who, if you know much about Scottish women's rugby, if you look at the Scottish team, the international team, probably every single player has had a coaching session with Claire Cruikshank, because a lot of them are come through the Edinburgh Uni. A lot of the players that I coached, a lot of them went through Edinburgh Uni Rugby as well. So she's, she was a perfect choice for Edinburgh Rugby as a coach, but she also can put a team together, and that's what she's done. I think also having there's a lot of players who have been brought back into the fold of Edinburgh Rugby, that may be playing for professional teams or out at sevens, etc. So they've come back at a good time. So it was an interesting game. Big hits, lots of big hits, lots of fantastic rugby to watch, and we were given a wee scare, and we luckily came out the winners at the end. But yeah, we were given a wee scare.
Yeah, you mentioned those players coming back. Lisa Thompson's probably front and foremost of those, isn't she? Has been an international star for years, goal kicking and everything else. And Gwalia had a couple of players back. Obviously, Robin Wilkins playing, but they were missing Nell Metcalf and Kath Richards, who've both been huge for them through the season because they were with Gloucester Hartpury. And I think that did have an influence on the game, if I'm honest, as along with Gwen Hopkins, who was incredible a couple of weeks ago. She's a real star in the making. I think she's under 20 still, so she's going to be a huge player. But for me, frustrating for Gwalia, because how good the season started with those back-to-back wins to then go back-to-back losses is a bit. They're now fourth in the table, having looked in a situation where they could even win the league or be in a position to be top of the league. Edinburgh now are obviously 4 points behind Wolfhounds on top of the table, but yeah, it's I suppose overall in the tournament is the better question, and how good it's been, because otherwise these players weren't playing. A lot of the Gloucester Hartpury girls that are Welsh our Welsh players haven't been playing for Gloucester, and I don't know if it's a similar situation in Scotland where a lot of your international players haven't been playing in the Premiership.
Yeah, I think well, for me, I'm quite lucky. Two of the girls I coached at younger ages, and also with our local team, were in the Edinburgh squad at the weekend and played, and we followed them for a long time. And what we're finding is that what they found when we did the original one with the Thistles, and we played some Celtic matches, the step up from age grade and what we call pathway up with us. The one of the players had said, look, the difference in gameplay and difference in just sheer physicality, etc., was night and day when we went to play for the Thistles, and they found the same again with Edinburgh, which is what we expect and what we want. But the big problem is us having all of our Scotland internationals away, playing at Harlequins, playing at Bristol, etc., playing at Exeter Chiefs is fantastic, but we're not developing our youth players and bringing them up to speed. And this is where Edinburgh Rugby has come in, and really they've had a fantastic, and from what I'm hearing and I'm getting back, sent back to me, is it's been incredibly useful for them. Someone like Molly Pullman, who played at Tighthead on the weekend, we've known Molly since she was 6, 7, 8 years old, showing the boys how to tackle, and she's just been fantastic. She's on her way. I 100% think she's going to be making it into the Scotland squad. She's in the age grade Scotland squad, and she's Edinburgh through and through. She's been a supporter all of her life, and she's absolutely loving every single minute of it. And she loves the physicality, and that's the big thing, I think, is we're now starting to see that link of, this is Scottish rugby. This is and you'll be finding the same with Welsh rugby. Yeah. You'll see this link of, you come through from your clubs, you play for your top level club rugby, and then you get the opportunity to go to your big teams, and then you get the chance to go to Scotland. And I think that's what we've been missing in Scotland, because everyone had to go away and play rugby for Harlequins, or even just down to Darlington, or when they were around, etc. So it is. I'm over the moon. It's fantastic to see, and you'll be the same yourselves, I would think.
Yeah, it's you mentioned that moving away. It was quite vocal. The WIU were quite vocal about saying to the players, you have to move. You couldn't stay in Wales and continue playing. And now there's this opportunity to play in Wales and play at a higher standard. Okay, it might not quite be at the Premiership standard. It's not yet. Let's be frank about it. But there are plans for it to grow. I know there are whispers of a North Wales team being included in this Celtic Challenge as well. So Wales would then have 3 teams. I don't know if there's similar plans in Scotland to add a 3rd team, or is it to possibly, or
no? At this moment in time, it's going to be just Glasgow and Edinburgh. At this moment in time, I think there's not that we. I think really just for cost wise and different things, we may as well just piggyback on to Edinburgh and Glasgow, because if we keep it tight and we keep it to 2 teams, then there's more opportunities for girls and women to be paid. If we start talking about a 3rd team, etc., then you start diluting the cash pool. And I would, the sooner we get Edinburgh and Glasgow players being paid to do their sole job, because we've talked about this before regularly about women's rugby. But if you look at, for example, you mentioned Lisa Thompson. You look at if you look at Lisa Thompson 3 years ago, and her skills, her passing skills, and her kicking skills, and you look at her now that she's being paid to do a job, and that's all she's thinking of, that's all she's doing, her skills have dramatically increased, and so almost as if paying someone to do a job and not have to worry about doing another job and then getting to the gym and getting to training and doing all these different things. Imagine that, they've actually been able to focus on their skills. But yeah, it's been for us anyway, and I'm sure you guys are seeing the same. The upskill of the players has been dramatic. So if we can get a URC style competition built as quickly as we can for women's rugby, one of the biggest growing sports in the UK, then we can get them being paid a decent wage and get them playing, and then it's going to help our senior teams, our international teams.
Yeah, it's definitely the case. It's an interesting one about that, as well as the quality and improvement, because I think in Wales there's almost the two teams have slightly different feels about them, the two Welsh teams, because you've got one team which is full of internationals in the pack, especially Worcester Warriors players that obviously no longer have the contracts, the likes of Sean and Harry's, the likes of Alex Callender, that have been given an opportunity to play. And then you have Gwalia, which is perhaps seen more as a developmental team.
Mm-hmm.
Have you been a bit surprised by the performances of the Welsh sides? Because outwardly, Wales have been, of these three nations, have been the best international side of the past 2-3 years. But it seems to be that their performances haven't been backed up at this level. And have you been surprised about that, or were you expecting Scotland and Ireland to perform better?
No, actually, I've been more surprised by Ireland, and because if we look at the headlines and we look at the sort of the conversations we've all had privately about women's rugby and how we feel it's incredibly underfunded and undersupported. Yes, I'm surprised that Wales haven't. The two teams in this competition haven't done as well. But on the other side of things, I'm not surprised, because Scotland are very, very similar, and I think Ireland are the same. We send all of our players away to play professional rugby, and they're the ones that are coming into the international squad. Our under-20s, our under-18s, etc., aren't getting the amount of game time that we need them to at the level that we need them to. And so you then try and put these teams together, and so you bring, for example, and I hope Adele doesn't mind me talking about it, but Adele Ferry, who played at Lock on the weekend for Edinburgh. Adele's been in the Premiership, Women's Premiership in Scotland, and she was someone that we, that had kind of decided that it doesn't look like it's going to happen for me, and I'm going to look at other things. And she's worked incredibly hard. She turned it around, and she's done a fantastic job getting herself back into the opportunity of playing for Edinburgh. But she would have had to have got picked up and gone away to Sale Sharks or to one of the big teams to get some sort of remuneration out of it and to develop. So she still hasn't got that ability yet at the moment. But with Edinburgh starting to build and Glasgow starting to build, then hopefully that will happen. So I think there is still this gulf. But it's given our younger players that are coming through that only know rugby. They don't know about having a job and having to go training and having building all of that together. They'll do incredibly well. It's the players that we've got now that we want them to get the opportunities. Now they'll be the interesting ones to watch, and I think they're the ones that maybe, hate to say it, are maybe the less they don't fit into the team as well as maybe the age grade players that are coming through, etc. It's maybe I'm not making myself clear. I'm trying to just talk about it, but I really do think that we have this. As you say, I was surprised about the Welsh teams not performing as well, and also the Irish teams performing so well. And then you've got those two Scottish teams, one which has got a coach who's absolutely fantastic and has been plugged into Scotland international team players for a long, long time. And you've got Glasgow, who haven't had that and have underperformed. So we're all kind of in that mix, you know.
Yeah, it's interesting. I suppose the Welsh sides have got a similar setup in terms of experience, where you've got Ashley Beck, a less experienced coaching Brython, who haven't perhaps performed as well. That I'm not putting the blame on him at all, but I'm just saying that he is a less experienced coach in terms of this. And then you've got Cat Nicholas McLaughlin, who's obviously been part of the setup several times and been part of the fabric of women's rugby perhaps for longer, and that has had an influence. I think there's another interesting thing with the Welsh sides, in that it seems to me that there's a lot more players that are playing because they've chosen that they want to stay in Wales and not move to England recently. I know one player, for instance, who was in the Six Nations squad, and I spoke to her at the time and I said, look, you've made the Six Nations squad following the Celtic Challenge. You've done brilliantly. Well done. Top job for you. Performing brilliantly at a local club. But she didn't want to make the move to England and is now part of the development side, but hasn't yet had a Wales cap, perhaps for that reason, that she hasn't made the jump to England. Do you think the Celtic Challenge is still just a stepping stone to playing in England, or do you think it'll always remain that, or do you think eventually it'll be able to compete with England? I suppose it's just a really difficult question to answer, but it's the age-old question, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's to do. The bottom line is money. I think we've talked about it so many times. We mentioned it already. Being able to be paid, mind you, you look at Jade Conkle, who's still a firefighter and playing for Harlequins, so we can't turn around and say it's all about money. But I think there's still a fairly big difference. I think if we can get to a point where we end up with a URC style competition, then we might be knocking on the door. And I think, but as I say, having discussions with some of the girls that are playing for Edinburgh just now, it's this big step up. I think if you think of, for example, the team members of Gwalia, then going and playing Harlequins, you'll probably find that the step up, but there'll be certain things that they're equal or better than them. But I think the physicality, because their training schedules, their eating schedules, they are treated as a professional club. So I think there is still that little bit of gulf at the moment. But all I can do is celebrate what's going on just now, because it's something we've been talking about for, well, when did I first speak to you, Carwyn? It was May 2-3 years ago.
2-3 years ago, yeah.
And we were desperate for having something like this. And now we've got it. We have to celebrate it and make sure that everybody who's interested in rugby and wants to watch women's rugby, get down to the live games, put your hand in your pocket and buy a ticket, because and support the TV, watch the TV, etc. Because if we don't do these things, then they'll have an excuse not to continue on and fund it.
Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I'm always interested in hearing people's opinions on is obviously the in a lot of respects, the women's game has been sort of following the path set out by the men's game, and then in other situations it goes completely different. So obviously, with this formation of the Celtic League, it started off as one of each, now it's two of each, and we're talking about, do we expand to a third or a fourth team? Do you think there's a really good chance to sort of learn from mistakes that the men's game maybe had? So obviously in Wales we had the whole issue with picking 4, then we ended up with 5, now we're back down to 4, and lots of people aren't happy with it for one reason or another. Obviously Scotland, you had the Borders region, which I know is a bone of contention for a lot of Scottish rugby fans still. Do you think this is going the right way? I suppose trying to ask.
Yeah, I think sorry, Karen, I don't know if you had but for me, yes. I think what's good, they're trying out different things. Having the Women's Six Nations, for example, on a different time schedule as well. You can see the point of it'd be great to have it at the same time, because you're then all the infrastructure's there, and people, you can try and you can try and have people around. Like, for example, Edinburgh played I think it was the Wolfhounds, an hour or so before the 1872 Cup. Scotland bungled that completely at the SRU because they only limited it to one stand, and they sold out. It was 1,730 odd tickets. They sold out 2 days before the fixture, and wouldn't sell any more tickets because everyone was too busy with looking after the 1872 Cup, as in staffing that. What they should have done, really, I think, on that particular day was have it open up. You can buy a ticket on the door. If you're there early, get yourself a pint, go in and watch the women's game first. Then you come out and you go over across into Big Murrayfield and you watch Edinburgh Glasgow game. They bungled, they did. I thought they missed a trick with that. But on the other side of things, there's a lot of women who are telling me they don't want to be involved with the men's game. They want to have their separate days, etc. Also on the other side of things, little things like I think they tried it. I think it was 2 years ago or a year ago. They were resetting scrums quicker. So if they had one reset, that was fine, but the second reset, it was just straight to a free kick. Because they were looking for speeding the game up a little bit. So that I like the fact that it's almost treated like a younger game. So you can go and try things and see if they're going to work and forge your own identity rather than hanging on the coattails of the men's game, which you really don't need to do.
Yeah, the other thing I'd add is the main thing has to be sustainability and financial sustainability, especially because look, it's just the Worcester situation was horrendous, and on taking it as a Welsh perspective, there were 7 internationals or something in that Worcester side, 2 of which are having ACL recoveries and in the middle of ACL recoveries. And there was an interview with Fiona Lewis where she said, who on earth is going to take a player that's coming back from an ACL injury when your club's gone bust? No one. And so the priority has to be sustainability. So I really do like that they've built 1, 2, and then maybe 3 if there's the market for it, if there's the possibility for it. And that is something that I do enjoy. I do appreciate that is it feels like they've taken learnings from the previous system. And let's be honest about it, in the current rugby market, they have to look at that as a priority because, we're not talking... We're talking about a system we want to have in place for 10 years and not 2 years, and that's the thing I really want to stress is that this has to be sustainable for a long-term future for these girls and the women that are coming back into Wales and want to play in Wales as well, and Scotland. Sorry,
no. Hey, listen, yeah, that's I'm a guest on your podcast. That's fine. You can talk about Wales. But yeah, I totally agree, and also you've got to look at and whether from the outside, let's just say a lot of us looking at Welsh rugby at the moment and don't know what to say or do because there are times you kind of think really automatically the first thing you think is, well, actually, yeah, 4 regions is too much. You should have one less professional team. That's going to give up this amount of money, which then go in and make sure these guys are paid enough. And I'm sure we could have a podcast, or you've probably had them, and you can have another podcast and talk about this completely. So I'm not going to I'm not trying to, again, we're talking about women's rugby and we're now talking about men's. But I just think Wales have got a fantastic women's rugby team at this moment in time that they've built on the amateur game, and now they've invested before Scotland did in having player contracts, etc. They've got the ability to move forward. Without swearing, please don't mess it up and don't grow too quickly. Just keep your 2 clubs. Make sure they're, just as you say, Carwyn, make sure that they're sustainable and they're providing as much as they possibly can. High level rugby and hopefully high level care for the players that they have, and then start selling their shirts, start selling their shirts to fans, start doing all these sort of things, because there's far too many international squads that don't sell women's fit, like our Scotland have their own sponsor and everything on their Scotland shirts. I don't know if the Wales squad is the same. Let's get them sold as well. And let's start building that sort of things. I'd far rather see a lot of girls and women coming to Scotland games with the women's team, national team kit on. So all these sort of things have to be looked at, but please don't repeat failures of the men's game.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to pick up on the sort of like the kits and merch, because it's something that Hugh from Scarlet Fever brought up then, I think as well, when he was on Pirate Rugby Pod, is you can't get these shirts. And actually, I quite like the Gwalia Lightning one. I quite like that blue and amber thing. Kind of reminds me of my hometown, Barry, with Barry Town. They play in blue and yellow. But the other thing is, they all only have one kit, which is really awkward when 3 teams play in red.
Yes.
So obviously, I don't know if you've seen. Is it? I think it's the Clovers who are the sort of Munster Connachts mix. So when you've got them and Edinburgh or Brython, it's just a really awful, because they're very sim. I remember watching the Edinburgh, the Brython Edinburgh game, and I couldn't tell what was which. It was a bit like that. Do you remember that Champions Cup game against Glasgow when both had this sort of weird bluey grey shirt and it was foggy, and everyone was passing the ball to each other?
And there was an Ireland South Africa game as well, and Ireland came out in almost camouflage green tops as well, didn't they? And it was it's like, well, that's the thing though, and this is what cracks me up, is that you're spending all this money on producing an Edinburgh squad, and all these different squads are being, but at least have an away shirt,
The thing is, even for me, even if they just went right, everyone has a white away shirt for now. That's it. Just you have your home strip, and then if there's a clash, you have the white one. And that's because I think I believe World Rugby are funding the whole tournament at the moment. So it's not necessarily the unions. So I don't know if the unions put in as well, but
I want to say something simple, which are, how many colours are there in the rainbow? Like, I just feel like there could have been a way. Okay, I know everyone wants to play in their representative colours, but there could have been a way that everyone has a different colour and that doesn't clash. And the Brython Edinburgh game was horrible to watch, because it was red on orange really all game, and that's.
But the Edinburgh men's team have 2 different kits. They have an away kit and they have a home kit. And I've bought kits before for women's teams and for men's teams. They're about £1,000 for a kit. It may have gone up since I last bought them, but they're about £1,000 for 23 jerseys. In the long run, it's not a lot of money. Come on, guys. It's like we pay expenses probably to some of the male rugby players that is far more than that, just for fueling their Range Rovers. We need to maybe just get in a bit of get a bit real here and get it sorted out.
Yeah. So I think as well, because I think Edinburgh, as much as I don't like the kits, they have got it sussed on how to do a home and away. They've got a dark top and light shorts, and they invert it then for the other kit.
Yeah.
And it's such a simple solution. Whereas, you get some teams who think, oh, we're normally blue and black, so for away we'll be pink and black.
Well, that's what kits used to be. I don't know if you both had the same thing, but when I was growing up, it was if you had a kit clash, you used to turn your top inside out and you'd have a slightly different colour top.
Well,
we used to have a stripe on the middle. We used to have this random stripe if we ever played another school team in red.
There's manufacturers out there. If you ever go to a Stumel game, a lot of they're private schools. That's fair enough. They've got plenty of money, but they've got reversible tops. So when they turn up to a game and they see that they're clashing, they just turn their tops inside out, and they've got a different strip with the same. It's all the same, just inside, and it seems simple enough, But again, it's this whole thing of they don't seem to think out. Right? Edinburgh Rugby, the women's team, we'll have to get them a set of kit, but we've only got 26, so nobody gets to keep them. And and some players are going to look stupid in that one because it's too big for them, and they're. Come on, lads, But don't. Sorry, that then gets us on to boots. And that then gets me absolutely raging, because we've got professional players who play for Scotland, etc. And I'm sure the Wales have the same, crowdfunding online and looking online for sponsors for their boots. And then you've got players out there who, who have sponsorship deals, and their kit suppliers give them 20, 30 pairs of boots a year, and you think to yourself, surely Adidas or Canterbury or Nike or whomever could go, you know what would look really good on my marketing campaign? Edinburgh Rugby or the Clovers or someone with all in our boots, and there's advertising campaigns and this, that, the other. Look at us, we're you've got and who's going to, why? I just don't understand. 23, 24 pairs of boots. How much is that going to cost a manufacturer? It's crazy. Anyway, I'm on my high horse, mate.
No, on that subject, I suppose, we've all seen the amount of ACL injuries in women's sport in the last 4 or 5 years, and there's plenty of I'm not going to rehash it because I'm not an expert in this field, but there's plenty of literature on all the dangers of wearing wrong size boots, wrong size equipment, along with turf issues as well. But that is one to talk about. So if anyone wants to read that, please have a look into it, because we're speaking about a situation that, well, in some instances could definitely be avoided. Boots that don't fit is just ridiculous at this level of sport. Well, at any level of sport, but especially at this level of sport.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but just to wrap up some of the Celtic Challenge stuff. So the table as it stands is we've got the Irish Wolfhounds on 19 points at the top. Then we've got Craig's beloved Edinburgh on 15, Clovers on 14, Gwalia Lightning on 11. Then it's Britton Thunder with a solitary point in 5th, and then with nil points is Glasgow, which I suppose is conflicting you for you, Craig, because I know you love taking the piss out of Glasgow, but I know how much you love women's rugby as well, and wouldn't want to see them languishing.
You've hit the nail on the head, because I was just thinking about it, and I was thinking, look, Edinburgh are up the top there. We've got the opportunity, and then you think to yourself, actually, there's a lot of players who the team I used to coach have probably played against, who now play for Glasgow, and again, it's just they've just had a bad time of it. They don't. I think it's just little things like they don't look as linked as or as cohesive as some of the other teams. They give them a year; they'll get themselves sorted out, I'm sure, and we'll have a little bit of a closer competition, because we don't want to be in a situation where we've got big teams putting bigger scores on teams. We want to have a close competition like we did at the weekend, and it was a bit of a nail biter, which we all love. So. Yeah, fingers crossed. Glasgow do a bit better, but just as long as they don't do as well as Edinburgh, I'm happy.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and then we've got the final. Well, we've got the final preliminary round, and then it's the very complicated knockout stage, which is so complicated they haven't actually announced it or officially confirmed what's going to happen.
Yeah.
All we know is it's going to be 2 triple headers. But so starting off on Sunday at 12:30, Edinburgh hosting Clovers at Edinburgh. Well, on Wiki it's called Edinburgh Rugby Stadium. I'm guessing is the Hive.
It's the Hive, yeah.
And then so that's a shot to, at the very least, secure second, possibly win the title.
Yeah.
But that will depend on the next game at 2:30, which is the current leaders Wolfhounds hosting Gwalia Lightning. So if we could pull off a fantastic away win, I'm sure Craig will buy us all pints next time he sees us.
Oh, come on, Gwalia.
And then it's a bottom of the table clash between Britton Thunder and Glasgow Warriors and Araya Stadium and Colwyn Bay that's also at 2:00. So just if anyone's interested in watching, the Edinburgh Clovers game will be on BBC Scotland. The Britton Thunder Glasgow Warriors will be on BBC Sport Wales. Gwalia Lightning Wolfhounds will only be on Rugby Pass TV, and obviously you can watch the other 2 games on that for that, should you choose. I think that's a parking for the women's rugby for now. Should we talk a little bit more about the more, the game that doesn't get anywhere near as much interest, obviously, or too much, depending on who you ask. So if we talk, obviously it's Wales Scotland this weekend. I thought I'd just be, as the teams have been announced. I don't know if you've had a chat, because I'm going to surprise Craig on this one, but the under-20s. So just wanted to sort of flag up that we've got 2 Blue and Blacks in the starting lineup in Harry Wild and Lucas De La Rua, who obviously has had a bit more senior rugby than the other. Hopefully they'll go for us. Plus several ex-Cardiff Pathway players. I did have them all written down, and I've closed the tab because I'm daft like that.
Pretty sure Hennessy's one, is he not? Have I made that up?
I know Hennessy's part of the Pathway, but I did want to name all of them without remembering all the rest.
I dobbed you in that though, and then I'm like, I just wanted to say on this. I mentioned it yesterday on the Welsh pod, but I'm so happy to see Harry Wild. I'm really excited. There's a lot of people talking really highly about this kid, and to get the opportunity to show what he can do, because let's be frank about it, next season he's going to have more people to compete against if he wants to get into a Cardiff regional side. So really excited to see what he can do at the under-20s level, especially. And we all know what De La Rua, Morse and Hennessy and Ackerman can do already, but there's a few other big lads in that pack as well.
Yeah, so I think we've been told to keep an eye out for Chapman and Freddie Chapman and Sam Scott, supposed to be quite interesting prospects off the bench of the under-20s. Also, for the best name to come out of Welsh rugby since Tane Basham, hopefully in terms of how they start playing at under-20s, we've got Owen Conqueror in the number 19 jersey. So I'll be honest, I know nothing about him, but I'm looking forward to finding out because I love the name.
Yeah, I've seen a bit of him. He's actually quite good. He's a good player. Surprised he's on the bench. So he's a good name. Another one is it Max Page in the back 323 jersey, or was it? I was speaking to Steph Thomas from Wales Online yesterday, and he was speaking very highly. Saying that people at Scarlet's level, especially, speaking very highly of him from coming through their pathway. So plenty of talented individuals to watch, and let's be honest about it, they'll be drafted into the Wales side within 2 or 3 years. So worth keeping an eye on that game on Friday night.
Yeah, absolutely. So from the Scotland point of view, any names we should be looking out for?
I think at the moment, I think the biggest focus for Scotland certainly is Robbie Deans and Ollie Blythe Lafferty at loose and tight head. We've got a couple of backups coming in, especially Callum Norrie at tight head on the bench. Callum I've known since a young lad coming through our squad in the Howe of Fife. So he's worked incredibly hard to get to where he is. So I think for us, we're focusing a lot on obviously the front 5 players, because we do certainly have an issue with especially front 3s. So certainly if you keep an eye out for them. I think also Fergus Watson as well at 15 is someone to watch as well. Obviously Liam McConnell as well, captain in the back row, is someone to watch. So lots of different things to see. We'll see what happens. Our issue is that these guys aren't getting a lot of game time. So our concern is we put them into the Super 6 competition that we have up here, the sort of the Pro-Am or what's the word? That's the buffer between pro rugby and club rugby, and we put an under-20 side in, under-20 Scotland Futures side in against all these, Stirling.
Oh, is that the Future 15? Okay, I was wondering what that was all about.
Yeah, so it was our under-20s players, and unfortunately, they were beaten royally by every single team. So we just have to. This is the big issue we have with Scottish Rugby at this one time, is our pathway. So, what I'm hoping that they've put some. What's the word? They've stopped the leaks and their defence is coming up a little bit more, and I think we'll hopefully give a better showing of ourselves.
Let's be honest about it. That's the situation Wales were in, especially 12 months ago. You know, we were going up against France sides who half the team were playing in the Pro D2, especially Tuilangi. But then you had the Welsh players who weren't getting a minute, but now they are starting to get minutes. You've got the likes of Morgan Morse, Harry Ackerman, especially getting regular minutes in regional rugby, and it's. You know, as bad as the situation has been in Wales, that is the positive, is that these younger lads who are under 20s as well getting the opportunity to showcase their skills at regional level, and hopefully that'll improve the under 20s team as a whole. And I suppose that must be the same situation in Scotland, really, but with only two teams, you're slightly more limited, aren't you, with the opportunities that they're going to get at regional level.
Yeah. There's a lot of people who. We see this is the issue, that the big issue I have, and we've talked about it a few before on our pod, is the fact that, you know, the French players that are the under 18, the under 20 players that are getting game time at Pro D2, you know, if you're going to learn how to play rugby and learn physicality and learn to keep your eyes and your ears actually on your face. You're going to learn that in the second professional league of France. So, and I think that's where a lot of people feel that in Scotland that our under 20 players should be playing regularly in the Premiership. Amateur squads, they should be going out and playing against. Especially the props should be playing up against 45-year-old guys who are trying to fold them in half on a regular basis, etc. The issue we have is do they go there and do they look fantastic because the level of rugby is a lot lower in the non-professional game, or do they go there and are they taught a lesson? These are the questions that you have to see where they are at the moment. And being involved with Super 6, the problem with Super 6 was the money got involved, so they started bringing players in who were older, who you know, they didn't, you know, they weren't using the younger players coming through, so they weren't getting the game time, and this has been the big issue that we've had. And then obviously Edinburgh and Glasgow, they'll use maybe a smattering of younger players, but the pressure's on to, especially in Edinburgh, to perform better than 8th or 12th on a regular basis in the URC. So they're going to, and that's where we, for example, we have had players who have moved along to Glasgow from Edinburgh because they weren't getting game time, and all of a sudden Rory Darge is an absolute superstar. And so these are the things that people are being missed because of the way the setup at the moment. So we'll have to see.
I know time get on, but I just do want to bring up one point, because obviously you've brought up the Super 6. Obviously, we're looking at setting up our own effectively equivalent, which was, you know, sort of started off being called the Super 8, and then it's now the
So the
enhanced
Super 8,
it's going to be the enhanced development competition or something like that. How do you think that has worked so far? Do you think it's mostly on a thing? You know, do you think there's still a lot of kinks that need to be worked out, or?
Well, considering we're in our 4th year and it's very close to being binned in Scotland, you've got a lot to. If you guys can make it work, then everyone can look at it and go, right, okay, this is how it works, and we'll try and work with you. The Super 6 has Scottish Rugby really promoted it, really pushed it. It was on TV, it was on the Scottish BBC Scotland, it was also on BBC Alba, and it has slowly people have lost interest in it. They've stopped promoting it now as much as they used to, and it was and there's talk of it being shelved. So there's a lot of people who like it. There's a lot of detractors from it. I liked it because it kind of it was there to try and take away from the Premiership teams who maybe had sugar daddies come in, and for 5 years they brought in and paid players, and they won a competition, and then the sugar daddy would fall out with the committee at the club, take his money elsewhere, and that club would then descend down the leagues very, very quickly. They were trying to stop that. I don't think they've fully stopped that yet, but there doesn't seem to be a discernible link between playing for Super 6 and coming up and playing for Scotland, or at least playing for the professional team. what tends to happen is professional teams will put players into their Super Six teams to get back from injury, or just to give them game time to keep them sharp. And so it's not being used as a development tool, it's being used as some way to put someone to either get them better or to keep them playing and keep them interested. So I don't think it's being used correctly. So I think that's the big the learning to take from it, if you know what I mean.
Thanks for that one, because as I said, it's one thing I said with Cardiff, the sort of three sides we thought might necessarily go into it have all been worried about sort of the bit from a revenue point of view. So obviously for us, it's we're looking at teams coming up, whereas I think it was better if you make a team underneath, because I think that is kind of the idea they wanted for this, is it's for the academy boys and then rehab.
Mm-hmm.
And then you might have a few senior sort of Premiership type players you can sort of nurse and guide them through.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that was kind of what it was supposed to be in Scotland as well. The big problem, and I'll say this wholeheartedly, as strong as I possibly can, we had probably 4 franchises from Edinburgh / Borders, 1 Glasgow, 1 Dundee, one Glasgow and 1 in Stirling. That was it. We had Dundee tried to become a franchise and they were turned down. There was another franchise for North Inverness Way, etc., and they were turned down. And especially in Glasgow, there was 2 or 3 franchises in Glasgow that were turned down, and it ended up Ayr. So, for example, Ayr, trying to get to Ayr, it's a train ride or a drive. It's a good drive out of Glasgow, and when you're trying to promote the oval ball rather than the round ball in Glasgow, which is a big job, you want teams playing, and unfortunately the SRU in their right minds or their wrong minds were very much Edinburgh centric, and going with established teams, and that's been a big issue as well.
So thanks. I said I know that wasn't something we originally planned on talking about, but I thought as it sort of came naturally, it'd be just interesting to have an outside view on one of what most people thought was actually a good idea in Welsh rugby, and maybe that's give people a few seconds to think twice.
Well, just be careful.
So I said, so this last part of the pod, thought if we talk about the game that's happening on Saturday, so Wales will be hosting Scotland. I know you said Edinburgh then. I was like, well, I think there's a few more. There's a few Glasgow. There's a few Glaswegian and English-based players going in for that.
Absolutely.
But so we'll be on Saturday. So as we've got you on, Craig, I was just wondering if you want to give a little bit of a preview. Maybe start off with just the overall Scotland squad. It's the most settled squad to come into it. It's the only one with the 10 with this same 10 from last Six Nations. I said most players from the World Cup retained, but it still looks, it's still not a particularly old squad. I was having a quick look, and there's only two players older than I am, and maybe a further 4 who are about the same age as me. So,
yeah, we're fairly settled. I think it's there's a couple of missing players. I think we've got Darcy Graham's out with a hip injury. So, funnily enough, you're looking at there's a possibility. Well, you've got Kyle Steyn, who's pretty much going to. You would think he'll fill his boots, and Kyle Steyn, as we saw with the Six Nations last year, was a very, very good fill-in for different player to Darcy Graham, but a very good player to have to come in. Blair Kinghorn. Now we all know Blair Kinghorn, and we all know the story of Blair Kinghorn and the Blair Kinghorn experiment at 10. He's obviously now out in Toulouse, which nobody saw coming. Just like Blair Kinghorn, Toulouse, one of the best clubs in the world. But he's doing a very, very good job out in Toulouse. So he's going to come in with his tail up and will be ready to do some damage. The tried and tested Hugh Jones and Sione Tuipulotu, that will probably stay because Jones has been playing very, very well. I would have liked to. There's been a lot of talk of Hutchison and Cam Redpath, especially Finn Russell and Cam Redpath, because they're playing together at Bath on a regular basis. But for me, I haven't seen what a lot of people see in Cam Redpath. So we'll have to see where we are with that. You're looking like you're about
I
to.
might,
Yeah.
I might tear my hair out of that, Colin.
Well,
Honestly, I think Redpath and Hutchinson are two of the sexiest rugby players I've ever seen. And I'm prepared to say that in the terms of, I just love the way they play the game. They sort of float around the pitch. But when you say that, what is it? Is it do you like the directness of Tuipulotu, who, to be fair, has a lot more flair to his game than just direct playing? And I don't mean to simplify it, but he can just truck it up if need be as well.
I think that's in modern day international rugby, it seems to be that we need someone either at 12 or 13 who's got a bit of heft about them and will take a sharp line. And don't get me wrong, Hutchie playing at Northampton Saints, I agree with you. He's like Damien Pinot. They look like they're going far slower than they really are, and they've got a silky smoothness. His hands, if he's on his game, his hands are fantastic. If he's slightly off colour, he can be a disaster at times. But I think that's what's kind of kept him out the Scotland squad, is that he just doesn't seem to. I argue about this regularly with Johnny McGinty and the guys on the pod. For example, we're not talking about the backs now, we're talking about the forwards, but we talk about Johnny Matthews, for example, who at the moment is within the first season of his main season within Glasgow, is well on his target to almost hitting the top try scorer mark already. And what everyone's saying, why isn't Johnny Matthews in the Scotland squad? Well, he should be the starting in the Scotland squad because he's so fantastic. He's a try machine. But the jump between playing for Glasgow and playing international rugby, where Johnny Matthews survives very, very well off the back of a very, very good Glasgow maul. You're not coming up against great maul defence all the time when you're playing in the URC. When you're playing international rugby, you're coming across the best in that country's defensive maul. He's not going to. So I think that's where, for example, Cam Redpath and Hutchie have had more of an issue. They've come up against maybe a stronger defence than they're maybe seeing on a regular basis, and so they've playing at Bath. I think Bath have been phenomenal this year, and Cam Redpath and Finn Russell both have been playing incredibly well. The same with Bayliss, for example, who's at Bath, but they're not knocking on the door of Scotland squad. So, well, Finn is, but we can talk about him more and more of all you want. But so I don't know. I think for me, Cam Redpath, I loved Cam Redpath. Maybe 2 or 3 years ago, Cam Redpath looked phenomenal, but then that was because he was a highlight in a Bath team that was a bit average. So I may be completely proved wrong, and I hope I am. Maybe not this weekend, but throughout the Six Nations, he may come in and he may be absolute. They will both come in and be superstars. But I think at the moment, they'll go with tried and trusted, and that's Tuipulotu and Hugh Jones, and then we'll go from there. We'll probably see. I would reckon you'll see Ali Price start, because I don't think Ben White is playing particularly well over in France, and you'll see George Horn on the bench to come in, who will give you he's a terrier. Just a life force in the game, and he'll come in and give you some oomph in the second half. And then forwards, well, who do you want to start with the forwards? It's going to be our front rows are going to be very, very strong until you get onto the bench, and then that's going to be trouble. So you're probably going to see 80 minutes out of Zander and 80 minutes out of Pierre Schumann. There could be a chance of that,
I agree, maybe on tighter side. Obviously, Nell is a huge loss, but yeah. I think I assumed it'd be Hepburn, and Hepburn's he is a decent player. Obviously, he had his spell in the England jersey, and we'll make of that what you will. But he has been consistent for Exeter. Is that not? Is it? Because I actually looked at the Scottish bench and I thought, oh, that's with the absence of Nell, a strong bench. You've got your Ashman or Johnny Matthews at hooker. You've got your whoever you choose in the second row as a bench, because I think all three are pretty strong. Back row, especially you mentioned Bayliss, but Bayliss, Christie, Ritchie, whichever one you take of those are athletes, and Ferguson obviously as well. But yeah, it's interesting you say that. Are you not sold on the Hepburn coming over, or is it?
I think you may see Jamie Batty on the bench, just because he's tried and trusted and he's been to the World Cup. Hepburn, unless Hepburn comes in and has set the camp alight, but really, when I watch Hepburn play, he isn't a Schumann. He may knock Batty off the bench, because I think he's. This is going to sound terrible, because I know that Jamie Batty has had a lot of problems with mental health and with body image issues and things like that. He has talked about it before, but he is in the form of his life at the moment. Batty is playing incredibly well for Glasgow, and he looks as good as he has ever looked. But I think Hepburn looks fitter, and could give so. You can only go by what's happened in camp, and we don't know what's happened in camp, so we'll have to see what happens. The big thing is Jamie Ritchie, wasn't named captain and has been told, and everyone we've heard on podcasts etc. Gregor Town say, well, he's not guaranteed a spot, and so he can't be named captain. So that's a one of our best fetchers, and someone who has saved Edinburgh's backside on a regular basis. That's a real interesting conversation to have about back row. Darge is obviously going to start because he's vice captain, or he's co-captain. You'll probably see Christie in the mix. You'll see Dempsey, the old Australian. He'll either be on the bench or he'll be starting. And then you'll have Ferguson to come on, because Ferguson's been playing back row as well as number 8, so you might find him on the bench. So we've got a lot of fantastic back rowers available. Luke Crosby, so strong, so powerful. So yeah, it'll be an interesting. So I think I've given you 10 minutes on the Scotland team, and I apologise. This is is meant to be balanced, but yeah, we've got a lot. It looks like a balanced squad, but there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of touched on my question, because I was going to say, out of who becomes the aged Australian, because Hepburn is older, and although he played for England, is originally from Australia. I suppose you can always call him the aged Englishman.
Yeah, well, for me, the aged Australian is someone who's played for Australia and has said that he only got emotional playing for Australia, not for Scotland. He's just he gets off on doing a good job for Scotland. Yeah.
Here's my 2 pence on that one. I've always felt Matt Ferguson is a far superior player. I think it was 2 years ago in Cardiff. He was immense.
Yeah. Matt Ferguson is a very, very good player. I think, but there you have someone who, and this is nothing against Dempsey, it really isn't. But you've got someone who is not only as good as Dempsey, but he's playing with a lot of heart as well. Rather than his head. I'll tell you another player that misses out on a regular basis, and Mr. Anderson, John Anderson, on our podcast, constantly pulls me apart for it. But Magnus Bradbury for me, is an out and out superior 8. In the days of now that we've got 3 back rowers who can play 3 positions, and sometimes in Sam Skinner as a lock as well. And that's maybe what's limiting Magnus Bradbury, apart from also being stripped of the Edinburgh captaincy because he got drunk and went on allegedly fell off, got into trouble with Richard Cockrell. Magnus Bradbury is a fantastic player, and he has really blossomed at Bristol. And I think that's someone who I feel has missed out on the opportunity of and we've brought in someone who has come through on age. This rule of 5 years, 3 years or 4 years not playing for his own country, and now he's here, and I find that a difficult pill to swallow. So that's why I'm maybe more negative about Mr. Dempsey, but he has done a very good job at Glasgow, so we have to maybe consider that as well.
Yeah, I think that. I think that's another podcast in itself. I mean, it should be worth reiterating that people who do re-qualify, it has to be a birthright thing. So
yeah,
they in the theory could have chosen the right country the first time round. Just in case Manuel Faye-Bosa is listening, does get his England cap. It's all right.
Sorry, you'll take him
back.
back.
We'll have you back ready for. We'll have you back ready for the World Cup. It's fine.
Yeah. Well, listen, and I'm one of the biggest defenders of Pierre Schumann, who is out and out. He qualified under residency, so I can't really sit and point the finger at players and say this is terrible or whatever. I just think that there's two other players there that could have maybe had more opportunity to play, but again, Scotland are very, very good at punching above their weight, because they'll take anyone who was the child of some sort of Scottish person somewhere in the middle of nowhere, wherever. We have spread ourselves wide all over the world.
I thought you were going to say spread our seeds, and I thought that was going to be a bad choice of words.
I was staying.
I mean, it was better than what I had in my head, which I think was actually quoting. I think that might have been quoting John Anderson on the Scottish Rugby Pod at one point, which is I won't go into it, but I might tell you what I was thinking of here. I mean, it's similar with Duhan, isn't it? Because obviously, he's as South African as they come. His brother, he's played against his brother at international level, but Edinburgh gave him the chance when he thought his rugby career was over, and he's sort of repaying that. And when you hear him talk about playing for Scotland, you do get that passion that Craig says is may have alluded was missing from another player.
And I did forget one player as well when we were talking about Tighthead, who has been training after a knee injury, and that is the one, the only Javan Sebastian. And
I can just hear Johnny McGinty swearing.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I can. I'm about to go on to the pod with the boys, and I can guarantee there's going to be plenty of conversation about Javan. I actually think he's pretty decent, and John Anderson doesn't. So that's a different story. But I think he's been training with the squad, so you might actually find that Miller Mills won't get his opportunity. I mean, you may find that Javan will be on, or Javan. I don't know how to say his name, but he may be on the bench as well. So yeah.
The biggest compliment I can give to Sebastian is the chalk and cheese effect between the Scarlet Scrum end of last year and the Scarlet Scrum this year. And he was brilliant at holding up that scrum during the Challenge Cup campaign against Claremont, even when Claremont had an interesting interpretation of the substitution of the prop rules. But also,
a French team, never.
I would say more, but honestly. But yeah, he was brilliant. He was superb at the end of last season at holding up that scrum. So from our perspective, I probably look at it a bit enviously, considering the inexperienced three tight heads that Wales have currently. That Azarati is obviously playing brilliantly, but the other two aren't playing much rugby. So that's true. Just on switching it to maybe a Wales. Not that I'm continuously obsessed with Wales, but I am. But do you look at this Wales side with a feeling of optimism and hope, because that's inexperienced Wales side and all this, that it's quite evident that it is a new cycle and lots of injuries? Or do you think, or are there players in that side that you think, I'm a bit worried about him,
I'm not so worried. I'm going to give you plenty to talk about now. I honestly, in my heart of hearts, I feel we're coming down to slap you around. Okay? In my heart of hearts, I think we should expect to walk in to the Principality and shove you around the park like we did at Murrayfield, and that's that. Okay? So please don't write in just yet, because I have got a but here. There are some players in there that I think will do a good job, but I think we will overcome that. That's if Scotland turn up. And this is the big question. We've got the Principality, who, as everyone knows and everyone talks about, is as good as the fans that are inside it. Wales will play as well as the fans inside will support them. So there seems to be some sort of voodoo or something happens as they walk into the changing rooms. It changes them around, and Wales also. If you tell someone they're rubbish enough over a period of time, they will come out and slap you for it, and Wales could do that. And so we've always got the fear. We always have the fear. So yeah, I think if Jack Morgan was playing, I'd be worried. And I'm not saying he's the only player. I think what's the second row place for Racing?
Will Rowlands.
Will Rowlands. You know, he's got the ability there. He could, you know, he's a good line-out operator as well. And as you know, Scotland aren't the best line-out, don't have the best line-out. So if you've got a savvy line-out operator, you've got the opportunity to upset us a little bit. You've got, yeah, I'm in a real juxtaposition at the moment, because we really, really should come down and win this correctly and win this well. But it's the hope that kills us with Scotland. We always, you know, and that's probably why we get the reputation of we're all talking, no trousers, because we get ourselves built up into this. Yeah, of course, you know, we've just talked about it. We've all just talked about it. Scotland. This is the best settled squad of Scotland. This is probably the best Scotland side we've ever had. And it takes Finn Russell to miss a couple of kicks, and then all of a sudden, okay, he is fallible. There's problems. Then you've got Hugh Jones misses a tackle. Oh no, the old Hugh Jones that can't defend comes back. You know, Xander gets an injury, so we've now got Javan on, and everyone's saying, "Oh, that's a scrum, absolutely knackered." You know, all these different things that come in, and it just all of a sudden, and if you watch not so much Glasgow, if you watch Edinburgh play. If Edinburgh get in their own heads, they've lost the game, and they'll give up stupid tries right at the end in the last 20 minutes. So, yeah, to answer your question, I've gone in a long, big, looping, roundabout way. I would love to say to you right now, yeah, we're coming down and we're going to beat you and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. You just don't know, and I would be very worried to say that that's going to happen. I'm looking forward to it because it's my first time at the Principality this weekend, so I'm really, really looking forward to it. But I'm hoping we're coming home with a win. It's going to be a long drive home if we don't. What do you guys think?
Oh, go on. I'll start. Again, I'm quite nervous about this. I know we've got the whole thing of Gatland doesn't lose in Cardiff to Scotland and things like that, but I'm not sure we've necessarily got the experience where we need to for, you know, various other reasons. You know, and as I said, at the front row won't be a lot. As much as I love the likes of them, Domachowski and Azarati, they are very raw. You know, Azarati's only got 2 caps. Domachowski's got a few more after the World Cup. Then you got Leon Brown, who is I think he's the most experienced of all the props we've got in the squad. I mean, Gareth Thomas might have just about overtaken him now, but he has 23 caps. Pretty much all of them off the bench, and he spends 90% of the season injured. And when he is fit, he gets absolutely turned inside out. So that worries me quite a bit. A lot of positive talk about Archie Griffin and Bath, and all right, admitting he's only the third choice, but similar to what I said about Rhys Littrick at Quins, you don't get to be the third choice prop in one of those teams without being decent, because they've got plenty they can churn up, or they can just buy someone in. And and he'll be and he's been learning off people like Thomas Dutoy and Will Stewart, scrummaging up against Ben Urbano, some very good props. So hopefully that might chew things up. I think it's going to be interesting what we do in the second row, because obviously Davis Jenkins is named captain, but Adam Beard and Will Rowlands are such a great lock pairing, and I think they balance each other quite well. And then back row, I think we're pretty much nailed on Rafael at 7 and Wainwright at 8, and then it's who do we pick at 6? Do we go for the more traditional blind side, who's also a bit of a line-out option in Alex Mann, but he's untested? Do we go for a dual open side with someone like James Botham, who's almost a Josh Navidi mould? Or I think some things have been touted as Tame Basham, who is quite a hard carrier. His work rate, but again, then we lose more in the line-out, which, if it's a struggle for Scotland, it's an absolute impossibility for Wales at times. So I think our pack's going to be. I think if our pack can get anything close to parity, then I think we're in for a good close game. Backline, we've got some bits of experience with Gareth Davis, Thomas Williams at scrum half, Tompkins North sit in the centres. Josh Adams, I imagine, will be somewhere along that back three, but again, he hasn't been playing much. So it's going to be a bit of a worry for us, I think, because all our experienced players are either not in form or have spent quite a lot of time injured at the moment.
Yeah, I think Rafael, to really answer Carwyn's question, I think Rafael is someone who I would fear. He's incredible. He's playing very, very well for Leicester. He is again someone who can, if we've got you in your 22 and we're knocking the door down as we always tend to do and not spread it wide. He's someone who can save that by turning it over, taking a penalty. He's absolutely ferocious at the breakdown. So there's someone who can turn a game. He can turn a game. So as I say, we're definitely not coming in cocky, that's for sure.
Yeah, just on Rafael, there are some murmurs that he may not be, that he's close to not being fit / not fit. And in the absence of Morgan, he's a huge loss.
You will be.
Who'd you pick at 7 in that case then? Would you go for both of them, or would Basham jump in there?
I'd go both of them. And I've said this off pod too, but just Basham's disciplinary record in recent times has just not been good enough. And there's not much else I can say. That the challenge against Leinster is appalling. But the main thing I would say about this game, and I appreciate we're low on time, but the main thing I would say is that for the first time in a while, I look at that bench and I think Scotland's bench is much stronger than Wales's bench. And I appreciate that's partly down to experience, but you've got returning players like Watkin, who hasn't played international rugby in a couple of years, possibly appearing on the bench. You've got the likes of Johan Lloyd or Kai Evans possibly appearing on the bench, or even Kai Evans starting, as might be the case depending on Winnett and situation in the back three. It's the bench that worries me more than the starting lineup. And I'm a big fan of Ben Healy, and Adam Hastings is playing a bit better with Gloucester, but I think I'd still stick with Ben Healy as a substitute 10. And at times with Scotland, it used to be stop Finn and then you stop Scotland, but now you've got Ben Healy who can change a game and play in a completely different way. And if you've got a Cam Redpath or a Hutchinson on the bench as well, you've got so many options of what you can do differently to change the game, and that worries me. In short, I still, as I said 2 years ago, will say blind faith and Wales will win at Principality, but it's the bench that puts the fear of God in me, to be honest.
There may be I might be proved completely wrong here, and maybe I'm hoping too much, but there may be a bit of a flyer on the bench, and that is Harry Patterson. He's a young lad that plays for Edinburgh. He's one to watch for the future. He's incredibly strong on the wing, can play fullback, can play wing, and good on the high ball. Almost to his detriment. He's a little bit too what's the word? He doesn't care too much how he ends up. He'll just go for a ball and then ends up concussed or broken at the side of the pitch. He is fearless. That's the word I was looking for. I would like to see him getting a cap. I don't know if it's going to be. I don't think it'll be against Wales, but it could be. He is that sort of character. So there are little bits and pieces there, but I think it's a real, as we've talked about, it's a real difficult one to call, because you've got some of these players like Botham, for example, who was talked about as one of the guys coming through, and then was completely discarded. So he's got something to prove now. Whether he goes off on his own and gets himself into bother, and because he's trying to do it all himself and prove something, that could be a problem. But if he actually plays within the team and works hard, like Wales can do, they can frustrate Scotland with their defence and their heavy hitting. So it'll be, you're not looking at a cocky Scotsman here. You're looking at someone who is coming down to watch it'll be a game. And if we do win, it'll be I really do feel that Scotland will pay the price for it, because they'll have to put a lot of work into it to get the win, Oh, and Hastings unfortunately is injured, so we've got no. So it's definitely going to be. Ben Healy. Ben Healy, who has unfortunately lost his kicking boots for Edinburgh at the moment. So we'll have to see where we go from there.
Well, I mean, that's not necessarily the case, because I know Townsend quite likes keeping Finn on for the full 80 and then using Kinghorn as the cover if needed. I mean, given we've only had two senior Six Nations squads announced, both of them gone 6-2. Do you think any danger of Tooney following suit with that one? Or do you think he thinks that he'll have enough physicality with the more traditional 5-3?
I think I don't. Right, I'm going to say this, and it's not meant the way it comes out. I don't see the Welsh pack being as physical, so we'll go with a 5-3. However, what I don't mean that they're not going to be hard hitting, because they always are. They always put a great defence in. They're always incredibly frustrating to play against. What I think is you're probably seeing a fitter and leaner Welsh pack than the old style Welsh pack who would just smother you to death. So I think that's that's so. If you're going to go, and if you're going up against the old style Welsh pack, then you might put a 6-2 out. But really, at this moment in time, I would expect it to be a 5-3. We need to break down your backs a bit better, because that's where I think that's where the difference is going to be. Apart from if Tommy Raffel's playing, then we're going to probably. But I think having Tompkins and George North in the midfield, etc. You've got a hard job to try and get through those guys. Apart from George North's glass jaw that he has, but he's not been sticking that out very often lately. So we'll wait and see.
I said, I think either way you go with we're looking at probably going to be a lot of inexperience. I'm glossing over the George North one. But, it's because I think
I was literally biting my tongue.
Looking at our back three options. Obviously, Rio Dyer is probably a sure thing to start. I said Adams is going to be playing with no Zammit. We're going to be looking at is he going to be starting at fullback? Is he going to be on the wing? And then we've got a new untested player at fullback. Whether it's Kai Evans or Ewan Lloyd, I'm probably more inclined to go Kai Evans. Points kicking, I think his tactical kicking game's a lot better. Ewan Lloyd's is a bit too fond of just running into traffic and getting stuck at the bottom of the ruck, which I know frustrates some members of the ruck family. So I said, so then you might be looking at, does Mason Grady end up coming onto the wing? And that's and then that could be interesting as well. And then he's just covering 13 or. But it'd be interesting. I would actually quite like to see Mason Grady versus Duhan. I know if anything, they'd probably be playing on opposite wings, but they both like coming in field to run around a bit. So yeah, but I don't think Duhan has many players who are about the same size as him.
Yeah, but the problem is Duhan has lost a little bit of his. I don't know. He just Carwyn is currently pointing sideways, and he does tend to, instead of there's times that with Duhan, and if you look at him, especially that try against England, if he actually pins his ears back and just runs, he's going to break tackles. The problem is that he went out to on the Lions tour, and they South Africa put 2 men on him all the time, so he had to try and come inside. But unfortunately, he's brought that habit into Edinburgh and also into the Scotland game. So instead of pinning his ears back, he's looking to stop jinx sideways. And all of a sudden, he jinks sideways, and then all of a sudden now he's running more and more inward. And it frustrates a little bit because, Duhan should be doing what Duhan does, and that is get the ball and pin your ears back. Or someone kicks the ball through and he goes after it, or he chases on the kickoff and scares the bejesus out of whoever's trying to catch the ball, But we'll wait and see.
Just a quick one. I personally would pick Adams at fullback because I think Grady has to start. Dyer's going to start because Gatland loves him. Adams will probably start because Gatland also loves him, and I just feel Grady has to start. Because of the way he's been playing recently, and I'd love to see him on the wing playing as well as he has for Cardiff. And then that is Battle Royale because Carl Staines a brilliant winger as well. But and no disrespect to him, but if it is Duhan versus Grady, that is a Battle Royale and a half.
The big difference is going to be defence because Stein is a far better defender than Duhan. So if it's Dyer against Duhan, then I would be a little bit more frightened of that because Dyer's got more of a step and got more pace. Because Duhan, no matter what anyone says about Duhan, he's got a lot of pace, but unfortunately he's like a tanker. He has to build that up and try to get him to turn. Takes about 3.5 miles to get him to turn around, and So I think if you're looking at the Dyer on the wing up against Duhan, I think Grady will have more of a handful with Stein than he would with Duhan.
Who was it that said the same thing about James Lowe? I'm trying to remember. Was it Ashton? Someone said it about James Lowe back in the day. Wasn't it? Chris Ashton.
Yeah. And he's never forgotten it.
It's one of those two, isn't it? Who Brian Habana's on about when his opponent being slow on the turn. Is it? I said because I don't want to keep you from your own podcast. Also, the Ospreys are recording after us, and I got told off for saying "fuck them" last time. So I'm gonna play nice this time. So fortunately didn't have time to go over the sort of community side of things, but briefly, big wins for Cardiff and Pontypridd at home, and the Rags will be playing tonight as this pod goes out at CAT. So get down there. Rags games are included on the Cardiff season ticket, as are the age grade games. So make the most of it. Don't complain that there's not enough home games. We've got plenty. So all that leaves me to say is thank you to my co-host Carwyn.
Definitely.
And thank you once again, Craig, for taking time out to come and talk to us about Scottish and Edinburgh rugby.
Not at all. Thank you so much for having me. And if I've rambled on too much, please excuse me. I'm just excited about the weekend.
I think we all are. So, and then all it leaves me to say is thank you all for listening. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for listening to the Cardiff Central podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Please subscribe, rate and review wherever you listen to us, as it really helps spread the word. You can find us on all the usual social media channels or email us on welshregionalrugbypod@gmail.com. And remember, whatever the question is, rugby is always the answer.
Sports Social Podcast Network.